الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Respected brothers and sisters, thank you very much for coming to the program, and thank you to everyone who's participated in organizing the program as well. They've been very accommodating. As you can see, I have my coffee tonight, and I got a very comfortable seat as well. That was one of the things that helps the person reserve some energy so I can focus more on speaking. So this is very comfortable. Tomorrow maybe I'm not going to be here, but maybe AI is next. We'll have a bot here giving lectures to you, and then you can have discussions with them, inshallah. Or not inshallah, whichever argument or side you're on. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Thank you very much. Here? Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. All right. So, continuing on from where we started, or where we were last night, what we can do tonight is mention a few emotions. And after the lecture last night, a few brothers and sisters came up to me and had some comments that they brought forth and some questions that they had, which I thought would be nice to discuss. So what we can do is briefly go over a few things and then open the floor for discussion. Don't feel shy to discuss. It doesn't have to be a personal issue. If you have any thought or idea, please do participate, just so we can have a discussion. I prefer having that style than just having a monologue, because at least I can engage with your minds and see how you're thinking as well, and to see if the message that I'm speaking about is reaching you, or maybe you have something that you want to add to it through your own experience or your own knowledge as well. So some of the emotions that the Quran speaks about, and it's a book that's filled with emotional stories and emotional words, are fear. That's one emotion that's mentioned many, many times. So the most emotion that's mentioned is fear. Now, the word fear in Arabic has different words, and each word has a different meaning. Not every type of fear is the same, and this is something important to understand, because sometimes we might misidentify an emotion. We have to look into the nuances. I might identify something as fear. I might think I'm scared of something, but in reality, it's not fear because of being scared of something. It could be reverence. It could be respect. But it creates a similar emotion in the heart of the individual. So this is where the intellect comes into play, the self-awareness, the understanding. We have to analyze our feelings. If we come to the Islamic theory of knowledge, which they call epistemology, we realize that the Islamic scholars divided knowledge into two different categories. There's two types of knowledge. When I know something, it can either be type of knowledge A or type of knowledge B. The first type of knowledge is what they refer to as knowledge by comprehension, or knowledge by perception. And that is the knowledge through the mind. So if I have an idea, I have an image, I look at the hall over here, I see the light up there, I see a chair, I see the floor. What happens is this image is imprinted in my mind. I have knowledge of the chair. I have knowledge of the ceiling. I have knowledge of the wall, right? That's how I know these things exist. But what's in my mind is not the actual thing outside, right? I don't have the microphone in my mind. I have an image of it. So this is knowledge by perception, knowledge by comprehension. Definitions, images, thoughts, ideas, imaginations, that's the first type of knowledge. The second type of knowledge is what they call knowledge by presence. And that is when the thing that I know is present inside of me. So this microphone, I know it, but the microphone itself is not inside of me. However, when I'm happy, that emotion, that feeling of happiness, is it inside of me or is it outside of me? Happiness, the feeling, it's inside of me, right? I feel it inside. There's no happiness outside that I'm looking at or analyzing or seeing, right? I feel it inside. When I sleep at night and I see a dream, and I wake up in the morning, that dream, was it inside of me or was it outside of me? The dream itself. It was inside, right? I saw it, I felt it, and that's why I interact with it as well. It wasn't outside of me. There was nothing outside called a dream that I can catch or touch or anything. But when I wake up and I think about my dream, that thought of the dream is not the dream itself. That's knowledge by perception, right? The dream itself is knowledge by presence, but analyzing the dream is knowledge by perception. Emotions are the same way. I feel things. I feel happiness. I feel sadness. I feel anger. I feel fear. I have anxiety. I have this. I have that. The actual emotion is what I feel. But when I think about it, that's the other type of knowledge, the knowledge by perception. And that's where I can go wrong. I need to train my mind to analyze and to think about the emotions that I have and to be very accurate in how I feel them. When I'm scared of something or when something bothers me, I have to focus on where that emotion is affecting me in my body. Is it affecting my chest? Is it affecting my heart? Is it affecting my hands? Is it affecting my mind? My eyes, do they get affected? And if you start analyzing that way, you start realizing that there are differences in the type of fear or sadness or happiness that you have. They're not all the same. Every emotion has a specific nuance or detail that makes it different from the other emotion. By doing that, you start understanding yourself more. You start realizing which anger inside of you is a negative type of anger because it always affects the same place and it has the same feeling. But you need to perceive this. You need to analyze it. You have to think about it. When it comes to anger, for example, that's the example that I gave yesterday. No, fear, sorry. We said that emotions can be divided into positive, negative, and natural or neutral. So there's a type of fear that is very natural. And that is the fear that happens just automatically. If you're standing somewhere and something falls off the ceiling, and you immediately run away. That's a natural fear, right? It's something you don't even think about. It just happens. You get scared of it, and you move away. Now, there are other types of fear. There's a fear, for example, the fear of failure in life. This is a fear that all of us have, or hopefully all of us have. This drives us to try to succeed in life. If I'm scared that I'm going to fail, I try to go to school, I try to do things that push me towards not failing, push me towards succeeding. This is good. This is positive. Now there's a negative type of fear, which is excessive fear. And this fear, instead of driving me towards doing something that's good for myself, it prevents me from moving forward in life. I'm someone who has difficulty dealing with social situations. I'm someone who has a lot of doubts in his or her mind. I'm not sure what I want in life. I'm scared of moving forward. I don't like to try something new. I don't like to take risks in my life. This type of fear, if it's excessive, it's irrational, what it does, it hinders you from moving forward and from progressing in your life. We see this in the story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. When God wanted to speak to him, it's as if Moses wanted to run away because he got scared from the manifestation of the divine. It's like a lightning bolt hit and it made him faint and lose consciousness. It was a divine, majestic event that occurred. But God told him, don't be scared. If you run away, you're going to lose the opportunity of receiving this divine revelation. You have to remain here, you have to face your fear, and you have to overcome it. This is God speaking to you. And God will never harm you, God will never oppress you, and God will never wrong you. You have to understand that. Maybe in your mind, you haven't reached that level of comprehension or maturity, but this is the time where you have to grow intellectually and understand that when you're in the presence of God, you will never be harmed in a wrong way. So sometimes I have that problem dealing with those who are around me. If I'm speaking to a parent, for example, and I'm not raised in a family where emotions are something that we were taught to express to each other. A lot of cultures have this issue, especially in the East. They're not taught to tell each other that they love them, like the parent towards the child, or the child towards the parent, or the siblings between each other. We're not taught to express emotions. One time I gave a lecture in another state, and I spoke about how important it is for the husband to tell the wife that he loves her, and how important it is for the wife to say that as well. Expressing emotions is very recommended in Islam. We have a lot of ahadith, especially, emphasizing the fact that if you have a feeling towards something or someone else, that you express it and you don't keep it inside of you. A lot of ahadith, for example, that if there's a guy who has a friend or a brother in Islam, and they love them, they have respect for them, they're very close to them, the Imam says, go tell that person that you love him. Nowadays, you might think this is not manly, right? This is not masculine. If a guy tells his friend that he loves him, of course loves him in the halal way, and that's what the Imam is referring to. So having that brotherly love, and a sister with a sister, I think with the sisters it might be easier, but with the guys they're more reserved emotionally, they suppress all these feelings, right? But the Imam, his companions were the same way. He would come, in one of the hadiths, the companion comes to the Imam and tells him, "Oh, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, I love this person, my brother. I have a lot of affection for him. I have a lot of attachment to him. I would die for him. He's a very close brother of mine." Of course, a brother from another mother, right? Not a sibling. So the Imam tells him, he asked him, did you tell him? Did you express these emotions to him? He said, no, I haven't. He says, well, what good are they for you to come and tell me instead of telling him? Go tell him your emotions. It's very recommended that if you have a feeling towards someone, that emotion is coming out, it comes out, and you express it to the other individual. So some cultures don't teach this. They teach that it's a bad thing to express emotions. So when I was giving this lecture in this other state, and I'm not going to mention it, just in case some people know the person, he was an older man who came up to me at the end of the lecture. I'd say maybe he was in his 60s. And he told me, Maulana, he belongs to the Indo-Pak community. And he said that, I've been married for over 40 years now, and I've never told my wife that I love her. I always thought that it's wrong. I've been taught that telling my wife I love you is a wrong thing. And now my wife was sitting in the audience, and I feel like I'm forced to tell her that I love her after you said what you said. So I told him it's very good. After 40 years, to say I love you is better than not saying it at all, right? At least he came to the realization that this is something that he wasn't even aware of. Imagine living with your spouse, the mother of your children, the person you chose to spend your life with, and not even once you express love towards that person by saying it. Yes, maybe he gives her a beautiful house, he buys her everything she wants, he treats her very well, but there's an aspect that has to be expressed through the tongue as well. Fulfilling the emotional need of an individual is necessary. Speaking to a child, express love towards your child. Give them that love, give them that feeling, that security. Don't make the child feel that you're just an authoritative figure over them. Some parents feel that, and especially fathers, that they want their child to grow, if there's a boy, to grow manly, for example. Or a mother who doesn't know how to express her love towards her daughter or her child as well. Well, these individuals grow up not knowing how to express their love to one another. This person who couldn't tell his wife, I love you, there's a very high possibility that he's never heard that in his own home between his own parents. He was never taught that. He never saw his father telling his mother that he loves her. So he meets this girl, and he marries her, and he's missing that part. He doesn't know how to express that feeling and that emotion to her. So this is something that has to happen at a young age, and we have to be aware of it. Cultivating the emotions and allowing our children to grow up and nourish emotionally as well. Not to think that is something that is below us or beneath us to express emotions, especially as men. Yes, men are strong, they're supposed to be strong, they take care in the battlefield. Women have their own strength as well. They're very strong, and I'm sure women are stronger than men. This is my own belief. But for some reason, we have this wrong perception that emotions are a negative thing and a bad thing. And this is incorrect. Our ahadith speak, no. If you want to have a healthy relationship, then you have to express emotions. You have to become emotionally intelligent, as we were speaking yesterday. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So coming back to fear. Fear, if it becomes excessive, it hinders you from moving forward in your life. You start developing some disorders in your life. For example, anxiety is one thing. A lot of people suffer from anxiety, and that's excessive fear. Well, if we come to the definition of fear, the scholars define fear as being afraid of something that's going to happen in the future. That's what fear is. So an event, a bad event that's going to occur in the future, it hasn't occurred yet, but if you know about it or you suspect something about it, it develops a certain emotion in you. Fear is never related to something that's happening in the moment. Fear is always related to something that's going to happen in the future. Even if you're going through some emotional fear because of an event that's occurring, your fear is probably related to dying. You don't want to die. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want to go through some sort of challenge. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. So fear is related to something that's suspected or known that's going to occur in the future, and we want to avoid that. It's related to a future thing. Now, most individuals suffer from fear on that level. If you elevate yourself spiritually and you move forward in your spiritual journey, the scholars say that you can reach a point where the discussion of fear doesn't even exist anymore. And how do they justify that? How do they explain that? They say, well, if fear is related to being scared of something that's going to happen in the future, and you are someone who is very elevated spiritually, let's take the hadith of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. The one where he says that, I'm surprised that somebody who has this anxiety in their life, when all they're worried about is something that happened in the past and it doesn't exist anymore, and something that never occurred yet in the future, it doesn't exist, and they're worried about those two things that don't even exist. It is the moment that we are living in that we experience. But most people spend their time and their life thinking about two things that don't exist. Something that has already finished, that's out of existence, and something that hasn't come yet. So the Imam gives us this beautiful formula to follow in our lives. And these scholars say, based on this idea, the person who doesn't live in the future and is not worried about the future in that sense, and doesn't live in the past, it means that they have no fear, right? If fear is something that's related to the future. But they say that this is a very, very high level of spirituality that we can reach, but it requires working on ourselves. It's something that we can put as a goal, but we have to deal with the lower levels first before we get there. But it is something that we can aspire to reach that point where we're always in the presence of God, where we don't worry about something is going to occur. We just do what we have to do now. We think about the future, we plan for the future, but what we experience is always the moment that we're living in. This is what the Imams want us to reach. This is the emotional intelligence that we aim for reaching. This is the goal that we put for ourselves. And in this holy month, this is something that we have to work towards achieving. There's a very famous story, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, where there was a woman who was fasting one day, and she was insulting and hurting her servant. She had a servant at home who would help her clean the house and work, do her chores and whatnot. And this woman was fasting, and she was insulting the servant at the same time. And the Prophet came to know about it. So he told some of his companions, go get some food and give it to this lady. And the lady said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm fasting. Why are you presenting me with food? And the Prophet tells her, how can you be fasting when you're insulting your servant? Do you think that fasting is only not eating and not drinking? The Prophet explains to her that the philosophy, or one of the philosophies behind fasting, is that we don't drink and we don't eat in order to be strengthened, not to do other things that are bad. The objective is not to stop eating and to stop drinking. That's not the goal. This is the means. This is training ourselves, practicing and strengthening ourselves not to insult other people and not to do injustice towards other people. So taking advantage of this month, using fasting as a means to gain control over ourselves, is something that we should take an advantage of. 1 month in the year, we're forced to fast because we usually don't voluntarily fast. Some people do, but the majority of us don't throughout the year. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this month. He says, this month I'm not going to give you the choice. I'm going to mandate it because most of you, if given the choice, you're not going to choose to fast. And you're going to lose this opportunity of training yourself and strengthening yourself. So I'm going to make this mandatory upon you. 1 month out of 12, where I'm going to force you because I want to push you. I want to make you stronger. But the condition is that you take advantage of it. So when we are fasting, we have to be consciously fasting. Not just fasting without being conscious about our fasting. We need to be aware of our fasting. When I'm fasting, why am I fasting? Put a goal for yourself in this month. Which emotion do you think you haven't worked on that you need to improve? Are you someone who suffers from a lot of fear? Are you someone who doesn't have a lot of fear? Some people, they like the daredevils, right? They throw themselves into very crazy situations. There was this one, I've never seen this myself, but I lived in Kuwait for a few years, and I was told by some of my friends there that there's this competition that these Kuwaitis do, not all of them, of course, never generalize, and it's called chicken. In Kuwaiti, they say diyaya, they don't say the jim, they say ya. So I said, like, what is this chicken competition? They said that they go to the desert with 2 cars. One person driving a car, the other person driving a car, and then they drive towards each other very fast. The person who moves first is the chicken. And this is something that they do in their leisure time. So these people, I don't know if they have fear, they don't have fear, but definitely this is something they have to work on their fear. They need to put more fear in their hearts because that's a crazy thing to do. I mean, you kill yourself. Imagine you end your worldly life because of this chicken game. I mean, what kind of value is there in that? So you have to see yourself. Where do I lie in this emotion? With hope, am I someone who's too hopeful? Am I someone who doesn't have that balance? Am I unrealistic? Because one issue that comes with this excessive hope or excessive positivity is that we lose touch with reality. In reality, there are painful things. There are challenges that are going to happen. This world is naturally composed of challenges and hardships. Yes, positivity is very important and it helps us manage those. But if we have excessive positivity, we end up disconnecting from reality. We don't know how to deal with our problems anymore. It's like we live in a bubble that's not related to what's happening in the outside world. What we have to look for is that moderation in our emotions. So choose an emotion in this month, whether it's your lack of ability to express your emotions towards other people, and try to work on that. Put that as one of your goals. And a lot of the times, if you fix one emotion, it fixes a lot of emotions with it as well. Because emotions are intertwined and interconnected. If you have fear, that might be also connected to lack of certainty, lack of certitude. If you fix that, then you might be someone who has more intellectual strength in their mind, because those two are connected with one another. A person who has a lot of doubts usually suffers from fear as well. So start by creating certitude in your life. Someone who has a lot of negativity usually suffers from despair in their life. Try to change that outlook. Try to start thinking positively in your life. If there's something that if you're with your friends, try to make it the best moment. It might be difficult at the beginning if you're not used to it. But the more you do it, the more you overcome that challenge and the more you develop what they call in English a habit, and in Islamic morality, they call it a malaka, a stable emotional state. That's what you're seeking. At first, they call it a hal. A hal is something that is not stable. It changes. It fluctuates. That's the beginning state of any moral trait or any emotion. It's going to be fluctuating. One day you feel good, one day you don't feel good. The objective is to change the hal to a malaka. It becomes a stable emotion. So choose something for yourself during this month and work on it, and inshallah, it could grow inside of you. One of the last things before we open the floor is one of the brothers mentioned yesterday the issue of empathy. He says that he feels that he was over-empathetic, and that was putting him into a lot of problems. And now he feels that by moving away from that, he's becoming selfish in a way. And this is a really big problem that we have nowadays. We don't have clearly defined lines of what's good empathy, what's bad empathy, and what leads to selfishness, basically, which is the excessive side. And too much empathy is what leads to suffering for the individual. So it turns from something good into something bad. Where do we find the balance in that? It's going to be very difficult to answer that question for him. But in Islam, the Quran at least and the Ahadith say that we have to be empathetic persons. This is something that we have to understand. Because empathy doesn't only help the others, but it also helps ourselves. By being empathetic, it nurtures and it makes a lot of other positive traits grow in myself. Whereas if I go towards selfishness and egocentrism, I block a lot of good emotions in me. There's a lot of good and positive emotions that I eliminate by being selfish. So I prevent myself from growing and improving in my life. But sometimes being over-empathetic destroys myself as well. Again, we're looking for moderation. Whenever you feel that this empathy is costing you your own goodness in life, then you stop it. But you don't stop it in a negative way. You say that this is my capacity. Don't turn it into a negative relationship with empathy. A lot of people end up, because they don't know how to stop an emotion or put a limit to it or put a boundary to it, they end up developing a very negative relationship with that emotion. I don't want to be empathetic anymore. I've been too nice to people. This is not the right approach to take. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that God does not put upon people something that is beyond their capacity. He doesn't ask you to do something that's beyond your own capacity. This means that each and every one of us has a certain type of capacity. The capacity sometimes grows, sometimes it shrinks. In a certain state, I might have a large capacity. In another state, I might have a small capacity, right? It fluctuates. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges that. He says that not everybody has the same exact capacity. So it doesn't make sense for me to ask a regular person and expect from a regular person what I expect from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. This is not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects. This is a realistic approach to life. People have lesser capacity. They have lesser tolerance. They have lesser patience. So God doesn't burden people with what He burdens the prophets and the imams, for example. They're able to tolerate more. They're able to express more love, more mercy, more compassion, more kindness. What we have to do is we have to walk in their path according to our own capacity, but not having a negative relationship when we reach the end. If I reach the end, I realize this is how much I can give. If I give more, I'm going to be hurting myself, and therefore I'm going to be hurting others as well. I'll just stop there until it doesn't harm me. If one day I grow more spiritually, I'm able to improve myself more, then I expand my empathy as I go forward in life. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the believers to protect themselves and their families from hellfire. Allah begins with yourself and then the family. If you're not healthy yourself, you're not good yourself, you're going to be unable to help other people, right? So this is something that's important. We work on ourselves, but we don't have a negative relationship with an emotion that we cannot reach. We don't want to become like that, because then we make a barrier between us and the emotion. We can never achieve it. This is why some of the ulama who are mystics, they say that if you are unable to reach a very high level state of spirituality, the least you can do is don't deny its existence. The moment you deny is the moment that you prevent yourself from reaching that. Why? Because you've developed this negative relationship with it. So don't deny the emotion, don't develop a negative relationship with it, but just say that I cannot go beyond this. Inshallah, if I improve myself and Allah gives me the strength, I wish I can help the whole world. I wish I can save every human being, as the Prophet ﷺ wished throughout his whole life. He wanted to save everybody. This is the amount of compassion and mercy and love that he had. So if one day our compassion grows, we can increase our empathy, but for now, we keep our boundaries, inshallah. I'll end it here, and then we can open the floor for discussion, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. If you don't have a question yet, maybe you can develop something. I think they're going to grab the microphone to pass around, inshallah. Yeah. Okay, who has something to say or something to ask or something to... We have a brother over there.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So I had a basic question. I was just wondering, during the shahr of Ramadan, just like a typical day, we like to eat about 3 times a day. Some people eat 4 times a day. Is it permissible to eat 3 times, 3-course meals throughout the night, into suhoor?
Yes, yeah, now you can eat as much as you want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's no restrictions whatsoever.
I mean, yeah, just don't kill yourself.
Of course.
Then anything below that you're allowed to eat. Doesn't mean it's good for you, but you're allowed to eat.
I mean, staying within the calorie deficit for sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We have a sister over there, brother. Green.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
So yesterday you spoke about using the willpower to control your emotions. Does that exclude those with mental issues or something that would be beyond one's control?
So when it comes to, if I understood your question correctly, when it comes to emotional challenges, the scholars have divided them into different categories. There are some people who are born with, physically, they have some emotional issues because of their physical problems. So you might have some pain because of how your body was born. You might have something in your genetics that causes you to be more sad or more, affected than other people. And there are other factors such as being raised in a certain family that affects your emotions, where other people were raised in other families and it's not as ingrained in them. So growing up in an abusive family, for example, makes you suffer more than someone who has never grown up in an abusive family, someone who grew up in a healthy family. So what they do is they try to deal with every situation differently. They say that in general, there is a certain amount of control that we have over ourselves. There is. It's not like everything is forced upon us and we have no control at all. There's a certain degree of control that we have. We are able to make change in our lives. The amount of change that we can do differs from one person to another. And this is related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's judgment. Allah will judge everybody according to their own capacity. But someone who suffers from some emotional issues because of something that's genetic or physically related to their bodies or medically related to their bodies, or someone who has, like, let's say, severe mental health issues, then the way either they can resolve it or they can't resolve it. If it's something related to their physical being, then taking certain types of medications might help, doing certain exercises might help, and someone who is healthy and doesn't suffer that might not have to take that route of medications. They're able to change themselves through regular means. Now, someone who's going through mental health issues, this is a way to describe a large range of things. Sometimes it's an emotional issue, sometimes it's an excessive emotional issue, sometimes it's abuse, sometimes there's a lot of things that fall under that category. Now, if it's very excessive and the person has a very weak willpower, then using medications, for example, just to get them started and to assist them in making changes in their lives is good. But if they have the capacity to change without relying always on an external factor, it's always better to do that because it strengthens your willpower and it makes you stable throughout your whole life. And then you can overcome your other challenges in life. So it doesn't just act like a Tylenol, like a painkiller, right? That just removes the pain for that specific amount of time, and then that pain comes back if you don't take another pill, right? If you're able to slowly move off and then build your own self and strengthen your own self, that would be a better thing to do. But you have to assess it for yourself, and your doctor assesses it as well.
Just sorry to interrupt you, Sheikh. I just have a short announcement.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters, I just wanted to make it clear that inshallah after the Sheikh is done with the Q&A, we have a documented recitation by Abu Dhar, and I really ask that you guys remain, especially because it's Laylatul Jum'ah and it's Shahr Ramadan, so there's huge fadila. And just quickly that they say Imam al-Mahdi comes out during Laylatul Jum'ah, so I ask you guys that you remain and stay and supplicate with us, especially because it's Shahr Ramadan and Laylatul Jum'ah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay, thank you for that. We have a sister over there on the right side. Now I understand why they make speakers stand up, because if you sit on this, you don't want to get, it's very comfortable. Very comfortable couch.
So my question was basically, if you're an individual that feels emotions very strongly, what are your top tips to mitigating those emotions and not letting them get to you as much?
Okay, so you're someone who feels emotions very strongly in your life, and I'm assuming you're referring to a whole range of emotions. So any emotion it is, there's an excessive amount of experience of that emotion. Some people are like that, and a lot of people are born differently. Some people are, you can realize it in children. Some children are very emotional, and then there's other children that are not emotional at all, but that also gets affected as you grow up, your surroundings, your family, your friends, and things of that sort. So what you're looking for is you have to find the middle ground. And you can either approach this problem in a holistic fashion, where you try to target all your emotions at once, or you can try practicing by targeting a specific emotion. And by doing that, it strengthens you in controlling, at least gaining some self-control. So for example, if you're someone who, let's say, gets overly angry at people, your anger is just excessive. Any small thing gets you very angry. What you try to do is you try to do the opposite of that. So in any moment, even if it deserves for you to be angry, you decide that I'm not going to get angry at all. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to break that excessivity that you have. You're trying to bring yourself down. Once you are able to master that, then you are able to control where your anger is supposed to be. If you're someone who has too much love expression, then you try to control yourself as much as you can. You just eliminate it. And once you are able to control that, then you allow yourself to slowly and gradually build the emotion again, but you decide where to end that emotion. So that's one method that they recommend doing. If there are no more questions, we can end it here so that they can start with the dua, inshallah. We'll make a very quick dua. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts in this holy month and to allow us to cultivate the emotions that we have and reach an internal balance, inshallah. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi.